Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I would like to talk about the impact of the rapid urbanization and housing policy in South Korea. Okay, I have divided my presentation into 4 areas. First of all, urbanization path and population growth. Second, impact of urbanization in Korea. Third, housing and government intervention. Finally, I would like to talk about the policy implication and conclusion. Okay, urbanization in Korea can be characterized by unprecedented rapid process. We never ever had this kind of the rapid urbanization in Korean history, and predominance of large cities, especially mega city region. For example, the Korean capital city, Seoul, and special polarization and housing shortages. I think the housing shortages was one of the most serious problems in Korea. And in terms of the experience of the last 40 years, urbanization has both positive and negative roles and consequences. The purpose of this study is to explore the impact of the rapid urbanization and housing policy in South Korea. According to the World Bank, the urbanization stage can be defined as 3 stages or phases. The first stage is called incipient urbanization from 1920 to 1960. In this stage, most areas are still rural. The government are not ready to establish housing policies for the slums or squatter settlement. Historical point of view, after Korean independence, 1945, and the Korean War between 1950 and 53, hundreds of thousands of refugees, mainly from the North Korea, streamed into the cities. The second stage of urbanization is intermediate, from roughly 1960 to 1990. As you can see here, the figure shows that the urbanization in Korea began to accelerate in the 1960s. You can see here the 35% of urbanization ratio in 1960 reached almost 83% in 1990. Okay, in the second stage of the urbanization, the industrialization changes the land use pattern and the economic activities. The people tend to move from the rural area to urban area to get some kind of the agglomeration economies, as you might know. In this stage, migration became a serious problem. Cities not only terribly overcrowded, but also rural areas were losing the most the useful people and productive members of their labor force. Okay, in late 1988, the population of Seoul reached 10 million. The Seoul metropolitan area, for example, 20 million people. Okay, table 1 shows the 10 largest urban area in the world. South Korea, Seoul intermetropolitan area, ranked 3rd. The second table also indicates that the Seoul is one of the largest metropolitan area, ranked 2nd. Okay, this is very interesting photos. I just show you. Well, in second stage of urbanization, Korean society has faced ever since the rapid urbanization process. This photo indicates the polarization of the housing conditions between the rich and the poor, and the slums and the modern high-rise apartment were coexisting in Seoul. And the advanced urbanization stage, unlike the second stage of the urbanization, in this stage, we could see the structure and qualitative transformation. After 1990s, the proportion of urban population size has had a tendency to change. It is quite interesting to see here, table 3, okay? In case of the capital region, okay, in 1960, the proportion of population in capital region about 21%, but it reached almost half of the population, more than 48% in 2005. In addition, on the large cities between 500,000 and 1 million, this kind of cities has been steadily increased, as you can see here. But the small towns, people with less than 50,000, has been decreasing. This is kind of the population transformation or population disparity between cities, big cities and small cities, between rural area and city areas. Okay, population growth rate has been decreasing since 2000, okay? You can see here, decreased dramatically. And after 2000, the annual average growth rate was estimated to be less than 1%. It is quite similar to the low growth rate of most industrialized countries, such as Western European countries and the North American countries. Okay, Korea is now facing a difficult situation, both a very low fertility rate and the aging population. How to tackle this problem? Fertility rate for Korean women was about 1.2. This is the world's lowest record, according to the United Nations in 2007. And the ratio of the people aged, 65 or more, as you can see here, increased dramatically. It is a very serious problem and a national alarm with gloomy indications of aging society, unable to grow or support its elderly and encourage women to have children. Okay, I now move on the impact on urbanization. The first impact was that the economic structure changes. Urbanization, as you know, has traditionally been linked with the industrialization. A drastic change in its economic structure in Korea was that from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. For example, 80% of the labor force was employed in agriculture sector in 1960. This figure, decreased dramatically, 12% in 1999. A second impact was that the growth of the per capita income and employment opportunities. Well, during the 1962 and 1971, economic growth reached 8.8%. This is very rapid growth. GNP rose from $82 to 289 in 1991. According to the government statistics, 2010, Korean per capita income reached almost $30 thousand US dollar. Okay, even though we have a lot of the positive impact of urbanization in Korea, I must say we also have the major negative impact of urbanization. The first one is spatial polarization. Second one is regional disparity. Third one is housing shortages and environment problem. This kind of the urban problem may face or suffering from all of the countries, especially developing countries. Okay, as you can see here, table 4 shows the housing condition. Even though we improved, Korea has improved substantial, housing condition upgrading, but housing has remained a persistent and divisive socio-economic issue in Korea. In order to tackle the housing problem, government has made a very strong intervention. For example, urban and housing development project, redevelopment project, and mass housing provision, so-called 2 million housing unit plan in 1988, and the price control or new apartment and regulation, and the provision of the public housing through land and housing corporation. Okay, I'll skip for the sake of time. I now look at the policy implication and the conclusion. We need to realize that the urbanization policies formed in Korea had both positive and negative impact and consequences. Okay, this is a kind of the conceptual framework of the interrelationship and impact of urbanization in Korea. I think the urbanization in Korea has linked closely with the economic growth and industrialization, the housing and land problems, and also, the rural situation, and finally, urban and regional planning. Okay, during the 1960s, government tried to unbalance the growth, so-called growth pole concept in terms of the regional development. After 1990s, government changed their policy in terms of the regional and urban development, pursuing balanced growth. So Roh Moo-hyun government tried to move capital city from Seoul to middle of the South Korea. It is quite argument we had. Anyway, this kind of the growth strategy, we had unintended, so-called negative impact, as I mentioned earlier. And also we have very intended or positive consequences. This is a groundbreaking ceremony of the so-called new city for the municipal city. Okay, I now emphasize the policy directions. It is necessary to have assessment of challenges facing Korean urban policymakers in the year ahead, including aging population and the shrinking labor force. Nowadays, we have lots of the immigration from Southeast or South Asian countries, from Vietnam and so on. And finally, I must emphasize sustainable urban management. The challenge lies in adoption of city planning, development and management approaches, which confirm two principles of sustainable development. Table 4 shows the basic concept of sustainable development in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.